As you've seen, we've got Ahmed Adamu, who is an associate professor of Nile University of Nigeria in Abuja. He is a petroleum economist. He joins us virtually. He will also cross over to Lagos soon. Good morning, Associate Professor Adamu, for joining us on the program today. We've seen some of your write-ups about this minimum wage, your perspective on the matter, where the big question, which everyone seems to be asking at this stage, because only this morning the publications are indicating that OPS says Nigeria lost about 3 trillion naira on the first day of this industrial action. But the president, as we also understand, has given the ministers saying, look, work out an acceptable template to all for this minimum wage. So you start by telling us, you've been talking about it too, writing about it. How do we determine an acceptable minimum wage from your perspective?
Well, the question of which minimum wage is acceptable from my perspective is not the question. The question is, should we have a minimum wage increase at this moment? Do we have the resources to implement this new minimum wage? And what are the consequences of increase in the minimum wage? So the reason why the workers are clamoring for increase in the minimum wage is to enable them to afford the inflated goods and services. But whenever you increase the minimum wage, those prices will also go higher. So as you increase the minimum wage, inflation will go higher because those extra incomes do not come from economic activity. So you have extra income without extra economic value. So the question is, instead of looking at acceptable minimum wage, let us look at how can we enable the workers to afford these inflated items without increasing their minimum wage. I know in Nigeria, prices are very fast at going up, but sticky in coming down. Now the question is, do we bring the prices down or do we lift people up to meet the price at higher level? Now the question is, if you have to lift people up, it should not be through the minimum wage increase. Because when you increase the minimum wage, you are also adding pressure on the private sector because other workers in the private sector will also be clamoring for the increase in their wages. And this will add to the operating expenses in the private sector because the wages, the cost of labor, is a significant part of the operating cost in the private sector. And this will lead to low productivity in the economy, and it also lead to job layoffs. So many people have to be laid off because the enterprises, the employers will not be able to afford higher wages. So you're going to have high unemployment and high inflation. The resultant inflation from the minimum wage increase will also lead to demand for more and more higher wages in the future. As you look at the recent years, almost after every 6 or 7 years, the labor unions will always come back and look for more or higher wages. So more and more wages have never been enough because the increase in the minimum wage has never lifted the workers out of poverty. So the question is, this is a moment for us to think outside the box. This is a moment where we have to do things differently because increase in the minimum wage is not inclusive. If you look at the number of civil servants, public workers, both at federal level and at state levels, they are not up to 10 million people. So we in the population of 200 million people. Now, these 10 million are asking for increase in the minimum wage. But the whole economy is also going to suffer because of that in form of unemployment and inflation. And so the welfare increase is not inclusive, even though the private sector will also want to join, but the private sector will not be mandated to implement that, or they have the option of sacking their workers if they cannot afford that. Another effect of this kind of minimum wage increase is on the state governments. The state governments have been complaining of lack of adequate revenue, that the revenue they receive, they spend most part of it on payment of salaries. And now with the increase in this minimum wage, if it happened, the salary budget will increase by at least 25% at the state levels. So the governors may find it very difficult when they are struggling with the revenue to afford even now higher revenue, higher salaries or wages. So at the moment when we have crisis in the educational sector, health sector, and the security, and now you are adding the salary budget, I don't think that's sustainable at this moment, and it's not inclusive. And this will also lead to cut off in development spendings, especially in healthcare and education, because the money we are spending on salary will become salary nation. We are not building infrastructure to enable people to earn their money.
All right. So let me ask you then. I mean, in your piece, you did an analysis of. You spoke about the CPI in 2011 when the minimum wage was increased, and then the value of 18,000 naira today, which you said is the real value will be about 7,000 plus in today's reality. Well, already that huge depreciation is there. But at the moment, you're saying we had to find another way and not by increasing the wage. But we also know that as we speak, which you highlighted in the opening sequence, that the costs of commodities, purchasing power has hugely diminished. So what then would your solution or suggestions be, since people cannot even afford the cost of goods and services in real terms as we speak? So what solutions would you proffer?
You see, economically speaking, extra income should only come with an extra economic value. So these workers, they are not adding economic value. They should not get extra income. So what we can do is to frame them or enable them to add economic value so that they can earn money. Because the consequences of increasing people's income without increasing the GDP or the economic value is inflation. So now you are asking for more money, but the inflation is also eating the purchasing power of that money. So higher prices, higher wages, you are back to status quo. So your status has not improved. So my suggestion is let us look at certain reforms in the workforce or in the civil service, where we look at the code of conduct of the civil service, where we can look at the clause that says workers should not do any kind of businesses. So civil servant, as long as you work with the government, you cannot do any kind of business. The only business you can do is farming or agriculture. But in the modern world where people can be enterprising, they can create business, they can add economic value even from their offices, workers should be allowed to operate businesses, any kind of business, as long as it's not going to interrupt or disrupt their work. So what we can look at is to reduce the working hours for civil servants, allow them to do businesses so that these people can go and add economic value. The money that that you're going to use to give them as extra wages, you can give them that money in form of soft loans. You give them soft loans to go and start businesses. So we want to see workers now engaging in enterprises so that they can add economic value, and then they can generate income from that, and then they can also create jobs for people. But now if you say increase minimum wage, what you're going to have is, first, the consequences on the fiscal responsibility of the states. Now, larger proportion of the population will not be served because this few number of civil servants have to be served. And the marketers will also have to get their share in the increase in the minimum wage. They will increase prices, arguing that minimum wage has been increased, so we have to also get our share. So you're going to have higher prices. We're already in the worst inflation since 1996. And that is going to go higher and higher. And that will not augur well for the economy. So we're going to have a situation of anticipatory inflation, and people will go back to square one. And the question is, how possible, how realistic is this new wage proposal? Because if you look at the last proposal, the minimum wage increase of 30,000 naira, many states have not implemented it. Now we are asking them to do more, even pay higher. So the implementation will take longer time, but the effect is immediate.
Okay, I want you to be able to get your thoughts on a few of the things that you've mentioned right now. And one of them that you kept saying was, inflated prices. You cannot use the minimum wage to be able to afford these inflated prices. And you did say think outside the box. Now, these ideas that you've come up with that are outside of the box, are they implementable immediately, or are they things that take time?
Yes. It might take time. Any route we take, as long as we want to get a solution to it, it might take time in this country. Because if you have to reform the civil service to make it enterprising, to allow workers to do businesses, we have to change the law that guides the civil service conduct. This one, we can do it quickly. But when it comes to giving them the loans to start a business, that one we can also start immediately. So we can target the lower levels of the workforce because they are the most vulnerable. Imagine someone earning 40,000 in a month in this period. That's not thinkable. That's not possible. So we can target those lower levels of the workforce and give them grants to start businesses, reduce their working hours. Because when you look at these civil servants, the workers, they go to the office and do nothing. They will sleep there, they will play, and then gossip, and there's no productivity. But when you release them, when you allow them and give them money to do and to go ahead and do businesses, that's much better than you giving them the minimum wage increase. That is the popular saying that says...
You've stated now that it will take some time. How long?
Yeah.
Because what the issue is things are hard right now and everybody's looking for an immediate solution. If you were going to put a timeline on when these ideas can start to have benefit to the civil servant, to the minimum wage earner, how long do you think it would take?
It might take at least a year for the grants and businesses to help people at least improve their well-being. But this condition we are is as a result of the manner the current administration has implemented some of their fiscal policies. So we have to anticipate this kind of consequences when you are implementing drastic economic policies like removal of petroleum subsidy, like the devaluation of the currency. These should have been anticipated. And we're already in the mess. So we cannot think of getting out of this immediately. But there should be a strategic and sustainable solution out of it. Because what we don't want is spending money and still go back to square one. So it requires strategic thinking and sustainable solution. And one of the sustainable solution is the minimal, is a provision of these grants for businesses to thrive. Because in the next 5 years, a new minimum wage campaign will emerge. In fact, it might be less than 5 years. Because if you look at last 7 years, there was an increase, and now we're looking at another one. And again and again and again. And this will reduce the purchasing power of income. So we have this campaign, we have this option. It's either to bring prices down or to lift the people up. But when prices go up and people continue to afford those prices at higher level, so you're already sticking the price up there. But when prices go higher and people don't have the income to buy those inflated prices or inflated items, the prices will have to come down. So now the side of the government can now look at the cost of production. So what strategies can we now implement to reduce the cost of living? Well, we look at inflation. The significant part of inflation is transportation. So if you can have strategies that will reduce the cost of transportation, then we can see prices coming down, and then we invest in food production, subsidizing production of agricultural products. That will also help in reducing the food inflation, which is over around 40% now. So these are some of the strategies that we can use the extra income that we could have used.
Dr. Adamu, there are so many issues. Well, if you can hear me, Dr. Adamu.
Well, it's Kayla here. We would like to even actually get from Dr. Adamu some responses to what we've just heard. Dr. Adamu, he talked a little bit about seeing salaries as cost of production, and saying that many state governors don't do that. Is there any justification to what we hear from the state governors saying they cannot even pay 30,000, talk about 60 or above 60? Is there any justification to these statements from the state governors, in your view?
Yeah, you see, when you look at my state, for example, Katsina here, What the state government is struggling with to ensure security, stability, and that will come at huge costs. And that's the biggest infrastructure we need to have peace and stability in the states, which we've already started experiencing. And that came at huge cost. But that has to be sustained, because in the fight against insecurity, you need more time to sustain spending in the security sector. But now, if we say we have to impose this minimum wage increase, it means that we have to do trade-off in terms of where to place these funds available. The funds have never been enough. So we have to look at the priority areas, the project, especially health care and education, and then the security. These are the critical sectors that the government need to put more money, especially in the capital spending, because that's where we can see the value in the economy. At this critical moment, anywhere you are placing extra income must be a sector where you are going to get an immediate extra economic value, so that you can circulate money, so that you can also create more jobs. But what you are doing is placing more money in the hands of people without adding economic value. That will not help the economy, and that will continue to fuel and feed the inflation. And then people will always come back and look for more. Because at this moment, it's inclusive investment that government must be doing. What can we invest that everyone will benefit? Not some group of people. Where can we invest so that we can have economic value? If you look at the civil service sector, some ministries are already overstaffed. And civil service recruitment is more like poverty alleviation. And people are employed without necessarily adding value. I can bet you more than half of the civil servants can be sacked, and there is going to be operation smoothly, and the ministry will continue to operate smoothly. So what we are saying is, we are not saying that they should be sacked. What we are saying is we should put the money where it will serve the economy. So the governors will always don't want this kind of minimum wage increase, but they will prefer to invest in infrastructure that these workers, if they want to invest in ventures, in businesses, they have the enabling environment to do that.
Okay, so Dr. Ahmed, that brings us to another question, which has to do with blockages in the wastages that we see in governance, because that is a major issue as well. For many Nigerians who are listening to this conversation, there's so much wastage in governments. Why can't we cut down on all those wastages and then redirect the money? Even though you made a very interesting statement, an increase in income without economic value, but for many people, they need to be able to survive. It should take a whole year for your ideas to come to life. So is there any way that these wastages can be blocked and then the money rechanneled towards the increase of minimum wage? Would that be beneficial in any way in your view?
Yeah. To get out of these economic situations, this kind of situation, I think I believe we have to do so many things at the same time. One of them is the investment in the right sector. Another one is you talk about reducing the leakages. But just reducing the leakages does not guarantee or just warrant an increase in the minimum wage. So we should do it from both sides. We should save money to invest. But I agree with you that some people need to be bailed out immediately, but that should not come from the minimum wage. And that's why I proposed the idea, let's target some group of the workers and give them some capital to do businesses. But that will also entail changing the law to allow them to do that. And if you look at the private sector, that's where we have larger number of people being employed. And if this private sector are not provided with the environment to continue employing people, then they will close businesses. Productivity will go low, and there's going to be more scarcity, and inflation going to go higher. So I agree with you, we should reduce the leakage. We should also redirect the money that we could have used to pay for the minimum wage and invest it in social critical infrastructure. So I agree with you, we should reduce the leakages.
Let me take it. When you speak about putting money in hands of those who are not impacting productivity, take for instance, what would you recommend for a state like Lagos? They've got the resources, and many questions as to should they not be paying way higher than any other state? What do you think of that?
But just because you have money, that does not mean you put it where it's not appropriate. So if Lagos has the resources, they should direct it in critical sector, not increasing the minimum wage, even if they can afford it. Affordability is not the question, but whether it is a right investment or not. So we have to look at where can we put these resources and where can we get higher multiplier effect. And so you put your money where you have higher multiplier effect. But when you risk investing in nominal income, you're also reducing your capacity to serve more people and your capacity to do more. Because when government can do projects with less money, but when inflation is higher, then they will need more money to do that. So even if you have more money, you have resources, that will not be enough for you to do critical investment. So having the money for Lagos State is not an excuse for them to say, okay, we can go ahead and increase the minimum wage. It's the economic consequences that will follow after that one.
So does that then mean that states like Edo, who say, look, we'll pay 70,000 naira, notwithstanding the challenges, are they making a very huge economic mistake because they are way lower in terms of revenue than Lagos?
Yeah. I think they should not pay them directly in form of minimum wage. They would rather give them business capital or invest in infrastructure so that other citizens in the states will also benefit. So you are not serving only the civil servant, you're not serving the workers, you are serving the larger proportions. The civil servant are not more than 20% of the population. So you are not going to invest your money. What you are doing is just increase in the income of the people. So that will make them to afford inflated items. But other people whose income has not been increased, they will struggle to afford those items. And because marketers will also want to get their share in the minimum wage, they will always increase the price. So that will also keep increasing the anticipatory inflation.
Because, I mean, even in states like that where taxation, if you're trying to set up, even if it's a mom and pop shop, the authorities swamp on you, you pay all sorts of taxes, both the ones the ones you have no idea about. They come to you with the tenement rate, you must pay all of those things. So will it be tenable if they then say people are not working? In fact, they're even creating more ministries. So how will they then say, look, we can't put the money in these areas because they think that almost all the ministries there are putting in their shifts?
Yeah, you see, even if the workers are working, there are so many ways you can give them bonus or compensation for the effort they're making, but not in the form of minimum wage because this minimum wage has this kind of impression that will be seen immediately in the market. But when you say bonus or productivity bonus or performance allowances, that will also enhance productivity of the civil servants. Okay. So you set target for them and say, okay, if you perform at this level, if you achieve this indicator, you have this extra bonus. So it will make them to sit up and perform higher to acquire this. So that will not be seen. The effect of this policy will not be seen in the market. But the moment you announce a minimum wage increase, the next day, then you're going to see prices going higher. So increase the minimum wage is more like increasing the petroleum price. So everyone will also inflate their prices because people have more money in their hands.
All right. It means that whatever negotiation continues today, I guess they have to factor all of your submissions into those conversations. Well, we do thank you for talking to us today, Dr. Ahmed Adamu, a petroleum economist, also an associate professor in Nile University of Nigeria, Abuja. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.